This episode of Poker Stories is brought to you by Best Bet Jacksonville, the largest poker room in the state of Florida with more than 60 poker tables and over 20 other table games. The popular card room is home to Best Bet Live, which streams cash game and tournament action on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Best Bet also has two other properties, one in Orange Park and a brand new facility that just opened in St. Augustine. This October and November, Best Bet Jacksonville will once again host the Card Player Poker Tour, which will feature a $3,000 buy-in main event starting November 11th. For more information, check out cardplayerpokertour.com or bestbetjacks.com, as well as bestbet_jacks on Twitter.
Hi everyone, this is two-time World Poker Tour champion Jonathan Little, and I want to tell you about my training site, pokercoaching.com. Poker coaching is the place to be if you want to increase your poker skills and learn to crush the games. It's the only place to quickly increase your win rate with active learning, so you can achieve your full poker potential without having to hire an expensive coach. Right now, podcast listeners can score a free membership by visiting pokercoaching.com/cardplayer and get access to top training tools like our interactive hand quizzes, our 7, 14, and 30-day challenges, and a roster of elite coaches such as Matt Affleck, James Romero, Burt DraftGanger Stevens, Michael Acevedo, and dozens of others. Again, that's pokercoaching.com/cardplayer to get your free membership right now.
Poker Stories is an audio series that features casual interviews with some of the game's best players and personalities. Each episode highlights a well-known figure in the poker world and dives deep into their favorite tales, both on and off the feld.
Hello and welcome to Poker Stories, a podcast brought to you by Card Player, the poker authority, and hosted by me, Julio Rodriguez. This is episode number 142, featuring former Finnish poker pro Miikka Anttonen. Now, Miikka is 35 years old, but he has been gambling since he was just 10. Growing up in Finland, he used to bet sports and handicap horses at the track, and as a teenager, he even developed what he admitted to be a bit of a slot machine addiction. It was rough for a while, and then Miikka found poker while working in Australia. For almost a decade, Miikka grinded at the tables, both online and live. He won millions and also got to see the world, traveling to 70 different countries. But then a few years ago, Miikka made a bet that would see him forced to quit poker as his career. You'll hear all about that bet, as well as what he's up to these days, working in poker media as part of the team producing Last Call, a poker documentary series now on YouTube. Anyway, that's enough intro. Here is my conversation with Miikka Anttonen. I am here with the one and only Miikka Anttonen, aka Chuck Bass, aka one of the Finnish superstars of poker. Let's, in many ways these days, huh? So we'll talk about that in a second, but how you doing?
Good, thanks. Very good. I'm stationed here in beautiful Tallinn, actually. It's about 7 degrees outside, winter is coming, but
You're
so
talking
far
about
so
Estonia?
good. Yeah.
Awesome. What brought you over there?
Work, actually. The Finnish legislation towards gambling changed like a few months ago, and ever since then it's been pretty difficult to do anything while being physically in Finland, but luckily Estonia is only like a 2-hour boat ride away.
Awesome. Well, we will talk about everywhere you've been in the world soon, and especially now that you have this project you're working on, which we'll get to with Pokerisivut. Did I say that right? Pokerisivut. Yep. So no, okay, don't tell me what it really translates to, but I looked it up on Google, and there were two options. It was poker is I'm sorry, and also poker father pages.
Yeah, I'm sorry to let you down. It's really just poker pages.
Okay, that's what I figured it was.
But I do like the other suggestions better. I think I should propose a name change.
So the project, of course, that I'm talking about is the new documentary series that you have on YouTube called Last Call. so far we've been following Dan Topponen, a Finnish rapper and also poker player, and interviewing some of the top players in the world. What's your involvement in that project, and what's that been like?
Yeah, I'm one of the executive producers and the head screenwriter in that. Yeah, it's been a really fun ride so far. We've actually filmed 3 seasons of that already, but we are just slowly dropping the episodes. So the world has only seen 6 eps currently, but there's many, many more to come as well. So looking forward to all the reactions.
Yeah, I was really loving it because the way, I mean, it's beautifully shot, by the way. It from the first shot you could tell, okay, this is not a typical poker documentary. uh you know um so, and in many ways it's almost kind of like a travel show slash poker interview show, because you're also seeing a lot of the places where these people come from, whether it's Finland, where you're from, or I think you guys went to Monaco, right, to interview the legend Patrick Antonius,
Yeah.
who's been on this show. And then upcoming episodes, you'll be going to Chicago. Is that true?
Yeah, that should be out, well, probably around the same time with this interview, actually.
All right,
Almost
we'll look
finished with
for
that one.
that. I'm assuming that's for Steve Albini, a legendary music producer.
Yeah, and Brandon Shack Harris as well.
All
It's
right, right.
actually a double episode. We have one about like the friendship between those two guys, and then one about the mixed game scene in Chicago, where we have, I think, 11 or 12 guests. So should be fun.
Right. I just finished watching the episode about all the PLO crushers and how Finland has been dominating that game for a while. Okay, so I want everyone out there listening, go check it out on YouTube. Pokerisivut? Pokerisivut?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to find it would be to just type like last call poker.
Last Call documentary. That's gonna do it better than that. Guys, check that out. It's great. Looks great. We'll get more into that in a second. But I want to go back to the beginning, which is what we do in this show. We talk about origin stories, and your origin story goes back when you were a child, huh? You started gambling at 10.
Yeah, pretty much.
What are we talking about here? Like lunch money, Pokemon cards, what?
Okay, so I was born in 1986, so I was growing up in the mid 90s, which was a great time to grow up in. Back then, the Finnish gambling legislation was pretty interesting. Like anyone could gamble on sports, and almost anyone could also like use slot machines, because like if you go to Vegas or whatever, you only see slot machines at casinos, but in Finland you see them in like every grocery store and train station, and all kinds of places where no one really watches who's playing them. So like I think they might have had some sort of like official age limit, maybe it was like 15 or whatever, but like no one was really like making sure that the kids aren't playing.
Right.
So it was kind of like I got interested in sports betting, and I think I sort of, when I was like 11 or 12, and I think I was sort of approaching it like in a relatively healthy way. Like, I was interested in odds and probabilities and stuff like that. I'm not trying to say that I was like a whiz kid and, that I would have been able to beat sports betting at 11. But,
Yeah.
like I was having some moderate success there. But then I also craved the fast-paced action that the slot machines would give you. So basically, over and over, what would happen is that I would get, large money, or I'd have like a summer job or whatever. I'd get my paycheck, I'd find some sports bets, occasionally make some very good money, but then in the end, they would just end up in the slot machines anyway. So it was like I would say, borderline gambling addiction, or I don't know.
At 11.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some people on this show who started early. Dan Zach was just on recently. He started real young playing poker. Dan Smith as well used to go to the track with his dad as a kid. What kind of sports were you betting on back then?
Mostly like soccer and ice hockey, which are like the big games in Finland, and I did a lot of horse racing as well. There was like a horse racing track maybe 15 miles from my house, and we didn't have a car, but they had horse race like every Wednesday. So I would not tell my mom and just like secretly go there using like 2 different buses and trains and whatever to get there, and just all kinds of degenerate stuff.
How did you handicap the horses?
I don't have I really don't remember that well. I don't think I did very well either, but it was just the most fun I could think of having at that time. But yeah, I think this is what makes it kind of interesting poker wise though. So during all these years, I basically gambled almost every day for money between, I don't know, 11 to 17. But I don't think I ever really played like Texas Hold'em. I don't think I even knew the rules of Texas Hold'em or PLO or any of the games. I never came across online poker. And then when I was 17, I got my first like sort of like real summer job. I was making halfway reasonable money, and I was just so tired of always losing everything on like slot machines or whatever. Like that had gone on for 6 years at that point. So when I finally got my first sort of like almost adult paycheck, I just had this weird feeling like I don't want to lose this money again. Like I actually worked hard for this. This isn't lunch money or whatever. This is like actually money I worked for. I just need to quit gambling. But I felt like I couldn't just like semi quit and do it occasionally. I just felt like I absolutely have to quit. Like cold turkey, no slot machines, and also no sports betting, because that was like the gateway drug. And I actually managed to quit, I think, on the first try, and I was very happy about that and sort of proud of myself. But hilariously, I think the day when I quit was like almost exactly the same day when Moneymaker won the World Series of Poker. And the poker boom happened. So I didn't end up finding out about Texas Hold'em for another 4.5 years, I think. And I'm just saying that maybe if I hadn't decided to quit gambling, I might have found out about online poker a little bit sooner. I might have been there for crazy boom. I don't really regret this or anything, but I just think it's pretty funny.
Well, I mean, you were like 13 years old and winning big jackpots, or how was it?
Yeah, I think the biggest win in today's money I had, I still remember this vividly. I was 14 years old, I believe, maybe 15, but no more. I won about like $7,000 or $8,000 in like a weird soccer handicap thing. And like the day after I went to school, because they allowed me to like cash out the insane amount of money, even though I wasn't like I could barely like reach the counter where they were piling up the money. But yeah, so next day I went to school, and we had this little kiosk at school where the kids could buy, like chocolate bars or candy or whatever. And I just bought all of it. I just put like we had euros at the time, I believe already. Maybe it was the previous currency we had in Finland, but I just stacked up like a pile of bills on the counter. I was like, give me everything.
I'll take the whole store.
Yeah, that was my one teenage baller moment. But yeah, like in the big picture, I know I'm making it sound like it was a lot of fun, but like in hindsight, I really do wish I hadn't discovered gambling at such a young age. I think it ruined quite a few things about my teenage years.
Oh, for sure. Like, it's we could laugh about it now because you survived it, but I'm sure there's plenty of people who didn't, and obviously for them, it's no laughing matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the story is that you dropped out of high school, right?
Yeah.
So what went into that decision? Because it wasn't because of poker, right?
No, it was. I would say that it was kind of because of the gambling. So this was pre-poker, but like I think by that time I didn't realize it at the time. This is just in hindsight, but I think I was like borderline gambling addicted / like semi-depressed. Maybe not depressed, but like I just felt like life didn't really have much to offer me at the time. Everyone else was really like excited about going to high school and like what future would offer them, and everyone had already decided what they would become when they grow up and all that. And I just didn't really have any sort of like realistic dreams because my grades had already plummeted because of all the gambling. I didn't really go to classes. I was instead like betting on horses at like noon on a Tuesday and stuff like that. And yeah, so I did try going to high school, but I think it was my like second or third day at school. I was just like, yeah, nah, and nobody even noticed for many months that I just simply never showed up.
I did. I've talked to a few players from the Nordic countries, and they did tell me that when you're a teenager, whether it's Finland or Denmark or wherever, um, they do have you on like a sort of a track system, right? Where you're kind of choosing your career as you go. I think I remember Martin
Yeah.
Jacobson telling me that he had to choose to become a chef at like age 13 or something crazy like that. So I can imagine if you hit 18 and you don't have a lot of prospects, it's quite terrifying.
Yeah, basically, I think it might have changed by now. I honestly don't have any idea, but like at least at the time, by 15, you had two options. You either went to high school or you went to, I think vocational school is the word, like
Hmm.
become like a car mechanic or whatever.
Yeah, well, you
And
pick up a trade of some kind.
yeah, and I knew that I didn't want to go to a vocational school, but I was also really like turned off by the thought of going to high school for another 3 years and then to uni after that for another 4 years. And it was like when you're in that like gambling loop where you spend hours every day just thinking about gambling, and it sort of like takes over your life, or at least like your mental energy. It and then someone tells you that, hey, just keep on going for 7 more years and you'll have a degree, and
Yeah.
it can be pretty overwhelming. And I was also keeping all of this a secret, by the way. Like my parents didn't know basically almost anything about this either, so they were just wondering like why is their kid so unmotivated, and like why doesn't he want to have a future. And I was just like, I think everyone just thought that I was being lazy or whatever. But
Sometimes
yeah,
it takes people a few years to figure things out. So you moved to Australia at 19, right?
yeah. So basically, what happened was, so I quit gambling, and almost instantly, I felt like my life was changing so much for the better. I did have like a proper cold turkey period where I think for the first like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, I was actually like dreaming of playing slot machines and stupid stuff like that. But then pretty soon, I sort of felt myself like slipping into the real world. I got a really nice summer job. I was making a bunch of new friends. I even went back to high school after dropping out like 2.5 years earlier, and just everything started feeling a lot more hopeful. I didn't really have any plans in the sense of like what I would want to be when I grow up, but I thought that I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I got my first serious girlfriend. We were together for like 1.5 years. We had a pretty ugly breakup, and at that time it was like November in Finland, so the sun barely rises at all. It's just like dark and cold and like the worst kind of place to be in that month. So do not come to Finland in November. And yeah, and I had a little bit of savings, and I was like, yeah, okay, what's like the furthest place from Finland where I could possibly go with nice weather and all. And I had a friend who happened to be in Australia at the time, and I was like, yep, okay, that's where I'm going. And I ended up spending almost 2 years there.
So that's where you discovered poker, right?
Yeah, so eventually, I think I had been to Australia for about a year at this point, and I was all out of money, which was not due to gambling. I was still very much not gambling at all. And,
Wait, was
like,
this when you were working? Sorry to interrupt. We have a question here. The worst job you ever had before poker, and is this where you worked on a farm?
yeah, I did like a bunch of like random farm jobs. I worked at like this weird cheese factory for a while. I worked at a mango farm, like picking mangoes, where there were like lots of like massive spiders on the mangoes that were poisonous, and you had to like pick them up and throw them away. I was what's the English word for like when you get the wool out of sheep? Like
a shepherd? No, they don't do that.
but you know what I mean. But yeah, I was doing that, and that's also something I wouldn't suggest you do unless you know what you're doing, because the sheep like to bite quite a lot when
a sheep shearer.
A sheep shearer. Yep, I did that as well.
A sheep barber.
Yeah, and then eventually I ended up at this prawn farm. So basically 10 hours a day, 6 days per week, all there was to do was to peel fresh prawns. And that was obviously quite shitty, but it paid really well. I think we made like $25 an hour, and this was like pre-inflation. So like it really paid very well. And so my plan was that, all right, I'll do this for like a month or two, just save a shitload of money, and then I'll go and, you know, do all the cool Australia tourist stuff that I couldn't afford before, like going to the Great Barrier Reef or whatever. So, and it was at that farm in the middle of nowhere. This was in North Queensland, Australia, somewhere, basically in the middle of a rainforest. The nearest like tiny village would be, I don't know, 50 miles away. So we would work very long hours, 6 days a week, but then on that 7th day, the only thing to do in that village was to participate in this weekly poker game. And I didn't know the rules of Texas Hold'em, and for the first few weeks I actually declined the invitations because I was so worried that, because I knew it was gambling, they were playing for like maybe $10 or $20 buying, and I was so worried that, you know, if I participate in this, maybe I'll just end up dusting my bankroll off at a roulette table or something, because I hadn't gambled in I believe about 4 years. But then eventually it was just so boring there. Like there was nothing to do. It was like purely out of boredom. I was like, yeah, okay, you know, whatever. I'll just give it a shot. I didn't really know the rules, and as the story goes, they were playing these like sit and go type things. I think we might have had like 12 players at just one table. So I was like 12 max full ring, hold 'em sit and goes. Obviously won the very first sit and go I ever played with some stupid beginner's luck, and decided that I am a god's gift to poker. This is something I should pursue. And I don't think it took me very many days at all to end up at the nearest casino.
So and, how did that go?
Oh, that did not go well. Okay, so this is a pretty funny story. I think this was in Brisbane. I'm not really sure. It was somewhere in Queensland. I went to this casino. I had saved about, I'd say maybe $5,000. And that was like a huge amount of money at the time. And
that's a lot of prawns.
Yeah. And so I had all this money burning in my pocket, and I was staying in this like backpacker hostel, so I couldn't leave the money at the hostel because someone would steal it. So I just like had to take all of this money with me when I went to the casino. I didn't have I wasn't planning of gambling with my $5,000. I just didn't have anywhere to put it. And they had like a bunch of fixed limit tables, which I couldn't play because my only Texas Hold'em experience was the sit and go. That was no limit. And then they had this really strange game that I have never seen ever once in my life after that, which was like half pot limit Hold'em. Like I'd be curious to know if someone plays that somewhere. But yeah, you could only bet half the pot, both pre and post.
Okay.
And it was 25.50 with, so that's where I started my cash game career.
Wait, not 25.50 cents. You're talking about $25?
Yeah. And like, I had never been to a casino before that, actually, now that I think of it. I don't think I've ever even realized that, but that might have been my actual first time ever at a casino. So I had like no idea how exchanging chips and all that worked. And, I just gave my $5,000 to the floor, and I was like, yeah, I'd like to play in this game. And I sat down and I thought that, okay, if I lose a little bit, I can just cash out and leave. Like, I'm not going to actually lose my $5,000. And then I, I was bleeding little by little. I lost like small pot after small pot because I had no idea what I was doing at all. And I was also very scared of money because, every pot was like $800. And I was like, shit, I'm in too deep. But I was like, too scared, not too scared, but too embarrassed to leave the game so quickly. And then I had ace king, flopped king something something on a 3 flush board. I had no flush draw, and somehow the money ended up going in. Other guy had a made flush. I had 0 outs. I lost every cent I had to my name, and all of a sudden I was like, shit, what am I gonna eat tomorrow? I don't have any money at all. And
Oh my God!
$8 into poker.
And yet you still stayed in poker.
Yeah.
So, okay, you didn't have a cent to your name. Is this when you had to sleep on a park bench?
Yeah, the next few months after that was like I believe I got some random job from Brisbane almost instantly because I really needed the money. I think I borrowed like $200 from a friend or whatever just to stay alive. Got a job, but I was also really like I really wanted to make a comeback at poker. I remember reading like those David Sklansky fixed limit books because I figured that okay, it's probably a good idea to start from the fixed limit tables whenever I make my comeback. So I was working some random job at the Brisbane airport, I think, and then all my time of work I was either studying poker or playing like the super small stakes fixed limit game. But it was just not really sustainable because like the gains were ranked very high. It wasn't like any sort of meaningful source of income in the long term. But obviously, after maybe my first or second winning session, I was like, yeah, okay, I can support myself now. I'm just going to quit my job. So that's how I became a so-called poker professional. And unfortunately, my math on this wasn't like really well thought out. I don't think it took many weeks at all until I had to sleep on a park bench and also an abandoned house for one night because I didn't have a place to stay and again had no money. So it was a bit of a rough first few months.
I mean, you were literally homeless because
Yeah.
of. I mean, what does that feel like? You don't want to call your folks back home and maybe get a lifeline.
Yeah, I mean, it felt very liberating. I had always craved freedom. Like the main reason why I always hated school was because like someone else was telling me what to do. But I was living my adult life 15,000 kilometers from home, and just sleeping on a park bench, looking at stars at night. It was kind of like a weirdly, I don't want to say romantic thing, but I'm struggling to find the right word. But I do have to say that I have very loving parents, and I always knew that I could just call them and ask them to buy me a flight ticket home and borrow me some money. So this wasn't like a mega heroic story where I never had any kind of chance of escape. But yeah, still I think there was a slightly wilder beginning to my future profession than with quite a few other players.
So I'm assuming you get a stake and start running it up at that point.
No, I think what happened was that I I went back to working some odd jobs and playing poker in my free time and studying and blah blah blah, and the end result was always the same. Like I would run it up a little bit and then quit my job after 2 weeks again, and then after another 2 weeks I would realize that oops, I have no money, and then eventually I think it was actually Australia that kicked me out because I had been there for like the maximum amount of time you can be there with a working holiday visa, and I also had to call my mom and tell her that, by the way, I cannot afford a plane ticket back home. Could you please buy me one? And I'm not from a rich family. My mom was a nurse. She just retired. So this wasn't met with a lot of excitement, but she did buy me one.
Yeah.
I went And I went back to Finland, back to my childhood home. By that time, I was 21 years old. It felt a little bit humiliating. Like in Finland, everyone moves out as soon as they turn 18. I know it's not the same in the States, I don't think. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But anyway.
Well, it's becoming less and less the case in the States, that's for sure.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, well, people are starting to stay home a little longer these days with inflation being what it is.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. And also, Americans tend to live in larger houses as well. In Finland,
That's
everyone lives
true.
in a small shoebox. So yeah, I had to move into my old childhood bedroom that still had like all the Spice Girls posters from the 90s and
You're
the
into the
bed was,
Spice Girls, huh?
yeah, that was the first band I ever saw live was the Spice Girls.
Really? Who was your Spice Girl of choice?
Gary for sure.
Oh, okay, Miss Hallowell.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
Ginger.
Where did Chuck Bass come from?
Okay, so there's this masterpiece of a teenage TV show called Gossip Girl, and they have a and they have a character called Chuck Bassett there. Uh, I think it's actually like Chuck Bass, like after the fish and not the bass guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish there was like a more exciting background story to this, but there just isn't. I just like chose it on a whim.
That's funny. I accidentally watched way too much of Gossip Girl, and I mean accidentally for real. My friend had told me there's this show you got to watch it. It's amazing. Kristen Bell's in it, right? And I
Yeah,
was
she's
thinking,
the narrator, right?
she's the narrator, right? I watched this show. I think 2 seasons of it. Going, where's Kristen Bell? And it turns out that she was talking about Veronica Mars. Um, Yeah, but I wish I had those hours back for sure. All right, so when did the spin up happen? Because I read that you took $100 and turned it into six figures.
Yeah. Okay. So I moved back to Finland. Was penniless. Had to get a job. Obviously, I wanted to move out of my childhood bedroom as soon as I could, and I think I was like still hoping that I would become a poker professional someday, but I also had like an ounce of realism in my veins by that time. I knew that I would have to actually support myself by doing something other than poker, at least at the beginning. But the thing is that by this time, I was already 21 years old. I had almost never played online poker. I think I played it a few times in Australia, but I had never really given it a proper shot. And so I think if I remember correctly, I had maybe like $20 or euros that I was able to deposit from my first paycheck. Like it was very, very tiny stakes, and I grinded up from there, playing super tiny stakes, sit and goes, and I think I turned that $20 to like 17,000 or something.
Wow.
Like following actual bankroll management, but this was still like it wasn't maybe during the poker boom anymore, but it was sort of like the after boom, because the boom that you guys had in the States in 2006 or whatever, it only came to Europe a few years later. So I was actually very much at the right place at the right time. It was very, very easy. All the little sites were competing against each other, giving massive, massive rakeback deals. I think I had like over 100% rakeback for a while, which is insane. Because you could like combine a few different promotions.
Yeah.
So they were like paying you money to play, and yeah, I managed to build a bankroll, and not because I would have been like shockingly good or anything, just more like it was very easy back then. Um, I went to Vegas after about six months of that. I think I had about $20,000 when I left for Vegas, and I had $0 when I came back home. That was that one stung, but like in hindsight, that was I don't think there was ever any other scenario than exactly that. Like I don't know how I could possibly have returned from Vegas with any money to my name. I just didn't
You're
realize
either
that.
gonna have all the money or
Well,
not.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but then I grinded it up back again. It was just very, very easy at the time. I think at some point I was so broke that I couldn't make any sort of deposit, but I had a bunch of empty bottles at home. In Finland, we have a system where you get like 20 cents for like each empty Diet Coke bottle you bring back to the store. So I had maybe like €4 worth of those bottles, and I can't remember how the story went. Like I think I maybe gave my friend €4, and he sent me like €4 on PokerStars or something like that, and I spun it up again. But yeah, it was
$4? Well,
yeah, it
€4.
was
That's
something like
crazy.
that. But yeah, I had like a couple of years of that where I would spin it up from very little to like low five figures, and then I would always find a way to go broke. And I didn't really, I wouldn't describe any part of that as professional in hindsight. I was calling myself a poker professional, and it is true that I didn't have any jobs or anything. All my income was coming from poker, but it was just like a shit show. But then in 2010, I believe, when I was 23, I discovered multi-table tournaments. I'm not really sure why I hadn't really given them any thought previously, but like I randomly played a few, and I just instantly felt like, okay, this is what I should be doing, and I'd say that's when my actual poker career sort of started, and that's when I started having like really good and long-term success.
Yeah, a lot of success online. You also got jumped on the live circuit. What was your experience like there?
Yeah, I really enjoyed playing live, and it took me a very long time to realize that I don't think I'm very good at live poker at all. I I know a very smart person who always used to tell me that live poker is the tax of online poker. So you win $10,000 a month playing online, and then you dump $5,000 a month playing live poker. And I was always like, no, 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 I have an edge. I have a huge edge. Like these fields are so soft. Like, look at this guy punting away 2,000 big blinds in the first hand or whatever. But like, I think my edge was honestly pretty small in hindsight. I think I was doing so much better playing online. I was always like a very strong multi-tabler. If you watch the Last Call season 2 first episode about Elis EE27 and his multi-tabling adventures, we were actually roommates back in the day, and like he taught me how to play 30 tables at once. And I was having like an insane hourly rate playing 20 to 30 tournaments at a time. I had like a very good setup and system for that. But then for some reason I wanted to chase the live tournament glory, and that was a very expensive adventure for me for many years.
It's interesting that there's not a ton of players really who excel at both. I mean, Fedor obviously was able to do it, and this is a few high rollers. Mike Watson comes to mind. Chris Moorman has suddenly become a live player these days. But yeah, there is. It's almost like two entirely two different games, right? Like obviously the core skill set is needed for both, but there's that little extra that comes with live play, exploiting people. I don't know, even maybe live reads. That there's some people who don't even believe that live reads are a thing.
Yeah, and for me, like I think that the biggest thing has always been that I have a small amount of social anxiety. This isn't something you'd ever really notice if you're like with me at a bar or whatever. But like I'm pretty introverted, and I feel a little bit anxious around new people, and so sitting down at a live poker table is just not like a very comfortable setting for me. So I was never really able to get into like a proper comfort zone, and like this might be like almost the only casino in the world where I have pretty good results is the one in Helsinki, and that's the casino that actually has like very close to the toughest games in the world for those buy-ins. I mean, all the Finnish end bosses used to play there, but because I was always comfortable there because I lived like one mile from the casino. It was like walking distance. So and always felt like I was sort of almost in my living room. But then whenever I would travel abroad, people would be speaking in a language that I wouldn't necessarily totally understand, and I just never really managed to get into that comfort zone when I was playing, as opposed to when I was grinding online poker, multi-tabling in my underwear at home. It was like I was a fish in the water.
Was there a highlight of your live tournament career that you look back on?
Well, I mean, I did win the biggest annual tournament that we have in Finland. That was for about $100,000, I think. So it's not like massive, but it was quite nice.
Oh yeah, I
I
get to win in front of your parents.
yeah, I did have this stupid bet with a friend we had made earlier that whichever of us would get a six-figure score first in US dollars would have to give like a pretty big percentage to the other one. I can't remember what it was. I think maybe 20%. And
Oof.
and uh, and the cash was for like $100,017 or something like that. So
Man, that's when you're rooting for a 99K score.
yeah, yeah, that was pretty funny. And then it it took him maybe like 2 months to win the F-Tops main for a lot more, and I would have had a share of that, but because it was like a one-way bet, so whoever cashes first, the other guy gets a chunk of that, but then that's the end of it. So
Oh man, so wait, you would have won more by losing.
yeah, exactly. And I think because I wanted to torture myself, I wanted to look at like the historical, like the US dollar value. And I think like 2 days before the tournament, the score would have been for less than 100K. It just happened to peak a tiny bit on that day.
Oh, the conversion rates messed you up that day. Oh,
But
brutal.
it is what it is.
Can you tell the Vegas strip club story?
Which one?
I heard about you getting a gun pulled on you, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So honestly, I'm not a big strip club guy. I'm not saying that
None
from
of us
because
are.
my
None of us
my
are.
mom might be listening.
We go
No,
into
no,
them
but
accidentally, guys. We were looking for the library.
no, it was like yeah, this was my first time in Vegas. I met this Finnish dude there. We became fast friends and gambled together at tables and decided to go to a strip club for no particular reason. And there was some weird altercation. Like the whole club was empty. There were like maybe four people inside, and we sat down at an empty table and ordered drinks. And then some wannabe gangster dude comes and he's like, "Hey, this is my table. You can't sit there." And it was just like a very random table, so he was obviously just looking for trouble. And we had had quite a few drinks and decided that it's a matter of principle. We are not gonna give up this table. And in the end, I think sometime later I was in a toilet trying to take a leak, and this guy ends up there and flashes his handgun, and can't really remember. I was quite drunk, but I think I punched him real fast, and then we just ran out of there and didn't get shot. I must say that at the time I did not fully realize how likely it is to get shot in the US because in Finland people don't get shot. A few years ago, the Finnish police force they published their data, and the entire Finnish police department they had fired 6 shots during the entire year, and 5 of them were warning shots. But so this was like the kind of background where I was coming from. I fully thought
Oh
that
man,
if
we
a
we can only pray for those numbers. You know what I mean? Like that would be the dream here in the States, but it's not gonna happen. We are a
yeah
shoot first, ask questions later society, unfortunately.
yeah I've come to realize this later on, but man, I was so naive when I first visited the States.
Well, what about your trip to Mexico? Was that a poker game that got robbed?
Ah, which trip to Mexico? I have quite a few Mexico stories. I used to live there for about a year with some poker grinders. This was when I was already playing pretty high stakes, and some interesting stuff went down. Yeah, I did get robbed once at gunpoint. It was like in a public bus. Because this is another thing, like, at least in here, when you get on a public bus at like noon on a Tuesday, the chances of you getting robbed are like zero. But this didn't turn out to be true in Mexico City, unfortunately. But it wasn't for a lot of money, and I don't really remember it that well. It was
Oh, good. You didn't have your entire bankroll on you at the time.
no, luckily not.
Okay. So yeah, you've lived a little bit of everywhere at this point. For poker, what was your favorite spot?
Well, Australia will always have a soft spot in my heart, and I keep going back there. I think I've been there 5 or 6 times by now. Before the pandemic, I spent 5 months there, and like I might go back this winter actually. It's just a super beautiful country, and to me, it feels like this isn't exactly the word that I'm looking for, but it's kind of almost like a spiritual place in the sense that everyone's so in touch with nature. And I don't know, my mind is always at ease in Australia. But aside from that, I really enjoyed living in Vancouver. I think that's an insanely beautiful, awesome city.
Now, you've been playing poker for years, and you noticed, maybe the win rate's not as good as it used to be, or maybe it's just like, breaking even at one point. How did this bet come about that forced you out of poker?
All right, so this is a slightly less dramatic story than the poker media made it out to be,
Okay.
although that was intentional on my part, I guess. So basically, what happened was that I had a pretty successful career playing mid to high stakes tournaments. If people want to hear numbers, I think I made about $550,000 pure profit online in the span of 7 or 8 years. So, that's not like a massive amount of money, especially when you include like the poker lifestyle and all the stupid shit that I spent money on, all the traveling and yada, yada, yada. So it's not like I had $500,000 when I quit poker. But anyway, so I had a pretty good career, but then, like you said, the games were getting tougher. Solvers came around, and it didn't really feel like my thing. I'm definitely more of like an intuitive thinker. I was I was doing pretty well in an era when we didn't have all the answers. And yeah, and at the same time, I was approaching 30, and I just sort of felt like I wanted to do something else with my life. Poker is such a hedonistic job, like you're competing even against your friends. I do admire how people have this like poker camaraderie, and I did have that to some extent with a few good friends as well. But still, at the same time, I just felt like, I was trying to win people's money at a card game, and that was my only contribution to the world. So I sort of wanted to get out, and at the same time, the profits were diminishing, and it seemed like I have basically two options. Either I would start like a super hardcore solver study camp, or I would do something else. And I had a really hard time quitting. Like in hindsight, I was being a total coward. It took me over 2 years of like barely making ends meet. I think like almost every single month I would win exactly the same amount as my living expenses. It was like blatantly obvious that poker wasn't really going anywhere for me anymore. And I was getting older and older, and I just like didn't have the courage to pull the plug. And then like almost after every single session, regardless of if I had won or lost, I like the first thought in my mind was like I should be doing something else, but I just didn't have the courage. And then so I decided to resort to the cold turkey approach again. So, but at the same time, I know that this sounds incredibly naive and stupid, but I sort of felt like, I might just need some guidance from the universe. So let's end this on a coin flip. So I came up with this, I came up with this like concept of, um, I can't remember what it was anymore. I want to say it was like if I could turn 500 into 10K within some relatively short amount of time, maybe 1 month or whatever it was, by playing like €5 to €10 tournament, something like that. And in my mind, I thought it's like a pretty close to an honest coin flip. So I would try my best. I booked some side action, so I had a lot of motivation. But I thought it was 50-50. I was like, okay, if I happen to win this challenge, I'm going to have quite a lot of money, and maybe it's a sign from the universe that I should continue. And if I lose this challenge, then I'm going to have to exit the poker world for good, because that was the bet. So I was betting my exit from the poker world against people's money, basically. And I got pretty close. I think the goal was 10K. I'm not entirely sure what the starting bankroll was, but I think it was 500. I think I got to about 8K, but just couldn't get there. Took a real life job, I think 2 days afterwards, and that was it.
Man, that's and then you're out, huh?
Yeah, and
But then you got to focus on your love of writing, right?
Yeah, I took a job at writing like almost immediately afterwards. My plan was to take a very long holiday and ponder my options. I was thinking about going to university actually. I was still like, relatively young. I was I think 31 or 32 at the time. So, I was actually pretty excited about all the possibilities that I had in front of me. And the only thing I had decided was that whatever I do, I won't go back to like I won't do anything poker related. I won't do anything gambling related. Any other job is fair game, but nothing related to gambling. And then, of course, you know how that how that went in the end. But yeah, I actually got quite a few job offers. It turned out that a few poker media companies, both domestic and international, had somehow been following the challenge, and I had been a somewhat prolific Twitch streamer. Like this was before Twitch became as big as it is now, and there was less competition. But anyway, I had these blogs that had like the millions of reads, and so basically, I think quite a few companies approached me with the idea that, hey, let's poach this guy and have him create content for us now that he's broken, needs a job, and the one of those offers was like very lucrative, and it seemed like a very good idea to just like grab it, and maybe I think my plan was to do it for like 6 months or whatever, just sort of have it as an in-between thing before I would graduate to something else. But then I just never managed to leave the industry. So that's basically what I've been doing for the last 4.5 years, I believe.
Yeah, now you're on our side, the media side of things, huh?
Yeah.
It feels good to not have to sweat the river anymore, right?
Yeah, it really does. And I mean, I people ask me quite often, like, do I not regret leaving poker? Like, do I not feel the itch to come back? And like, my honest answer is no. I have never felt that itch again. I just think I got it out of my system, and ever since then, I've been sleeping so much better. I like my entire mental health feels so much better. Like every single day, I feel like the world is my oyster, as opposed to during the poker times you would just think about poker hands over and over and over, and like see nightmares about bad river cards, and it was my whole world back then, and it was a great time. But I'm just so happy that it's not the case anymore.
Yeah, there seems to be a growing camp in the poker world these days that acknowledges that the game is best played between friends for fun, for stakes that won't kill anybody. You know what I mean? And that you save the pro stuff for the high rollers, those guys who are built to take that kind of, that risk. But for the rest of us, for 98% of us, it could just be the kitchen table game that got us started in the first place.
Yeah, I guess like what I think has always been a bit of an underrated option though is sort of having it as a side job. Because poker always has that threshold of like a certain buy-in level that's still soft. I would imagine that currently it's probably like $20 MTTs online are like the highest soft buy-in. I don't really have any data on this as I haven't played in 4 years, but that's what I would imagine. So anyway, you can make a pretty decent amount of money, and it saves you from all the mental anguish if you're making a living. If you earn a wage doing something else, you don't have to worry about paying your rent and whatever. So that whatever you win at poker is bonus money, and I think that's a nice way to have an enjoyable hobby and also make possibly pretty decent money.
Yeah, for sure. We have some rapid fire questions here to close it out, if you're ready.
Definitely.
I saw you this summer at the series in the media event, and you got to hang out with Vince Vaughn for a little bit. What was that like?
Yeah, that was fun. So we sat down at the media event with my friend Matti, who's actually the director of Last Call. So he's the guy responsible for the fact that it looks gorgeous. I have nothing to do with the beauty of the show, unfortunately. Anyway, so we sat down. There were like 3 seats left. We sat down so that there was one seat between us, and that was like the last empty seat. And then we saw Vince Vaughn walk up in there, and we were like, there are like no seats anywhere else. I wonder where he's sitting down. And yeah, he sat down, and he was sandwiched between us for a good, I think, like at least an hour, I would say.
That was
I
cool.
did get to try busting him. Didn't work out, but it was fun. He was a pretty chill dude. I don't want to misquote him, but if I remember correctly, I think he said that he used to play a lot of PLO in Minnesota when he was growing up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I would
so
not have guessed that out of Vince Vaughn. That's Master of Ceremonies for the World Series of Poker, Vince Vaughn these days.
yeah.
Biggest pot you ever won or lost? Your choice.
Uh,
I mean, honestly, the biggest pot you ever lost was that 5K when it was your entire net worth.
yeah. I mean, I guess the sexy answer to that would be my entire net worth multiple times. In terms of numbers, like I was never much of a cash gamer, but I have lost like 20K pots a few times, I think. Can't remember winning one.
What about the best shot you ever took?
Best shot. That's a good question. I just don't know if I've ever had really successful shots because all I remember is that every single time when I would try to like take a stab at high stakes, it just wouldn't work out.
Well, I guess
I'm
you could say that first move to Australia, right? Because at least you found the love for the country.
Yeah, I mean, outside of poker, I think almost every single shot that I've ever taken has worked out really well, and it's almost like a philosophical choice for me nowadays that if I feel like there's a shot I need to take, I just always take it. But in poker, this is necessarily isn't such a great idea. I have definitely harbor thoughts about playing in the full tilt 200, 400 or whatever in my time, but never really got there. And
Uh,
there's some expensive thoughts.
oh, for sure. You obviously are a gifted writer. Do you have any other artistic talents?
Ah, that's a good one. I mean, I'm a pretty creative person in general, but in terms of like pure talent, I guess writing would still be my only one. My girlfriend is a super talented artist. Like she can draw insanely beautiful pictures in like 10 minutes, and she always laughs at whatever I try to do because it's like a 7-year-old's drawing. So yeah, I guess I'm just gonna stick to writing for now.
Yeah, my art never got past 8 years old either. Um, what about the weirdest place you've ever played poker or gambled for money?
Oh, that's a good one. I was actually just thinking about this the other day because we are currently planning Last Call season 4, and one of the ideas we have on the drawing board is exactly that. We're thinking about doing an episode or two about like the weirdest place in the world that we can find where they have poker. I think like if we can find the right spots, that would be pretty funny. But let's see. I I played in South Korea. That was pretty interesting. I think I was literally the only non-Asian person at that whole casino, and there was quite a language barrier. Um,
I mean, you sounds like you've been all over the world. Is there any place left on your bucket list that you'd like to visit?
Yeah, man, I was just counting. I think I've been to around 70 countries, and
70. Wow.
yeah, and probably around 40 of them have been because of poker, like purely live tournaments. It sounds like more than it is because here in Europe we have 40 countries that are all next to each other. So on one trip you might go to seven countries. So it's not actually that difficult to collect those countries. But yeah, I mean, man, I just want to go everywhere. For example, I've only been to New Zealand for about 3 days when I went there to renew my Australian visa, and I only had like $18 when I got there, so I didn't get to do anything at all. I was sitting in a shitty hostel, eating a shitty Subway sub, waiting to get the email from the Australian Immigration Services that would welcome me back to the country. So that's one. I want to go to all the Pacific Ocean islands. Pretty much want to go everywhere. Like I can't think of almost any country that I wouldn't want to go to, apart from the couple of obvious ones, I guess.
The ones currently in wars. Um, if you could download one skill instantly, like in the Matrix, what would you choose?
Ooh, man, you have some good questions. I wish I had good answers.
Is there something you're just really bad at that you just would love to have as a skill?
I mean, I'm pretty bad at almost everything. Like, I, I I've come. I think usually people have like maybe two or three or four things that they are very good at, and they suck at everything else. That's definitely true for me. But it's just a matter of capitalizing on those few skills that you have. In terms of the question, I mean, I guess it could probably be something music related. I really wish that I had any sort of talent in music at all. That would be really kick ass, but I just completely suck. I don't have the ear or the physical skills to that at all. But I'd love to be able to do something in that scene.
Man, that'd be so cool to just download all of Hendrix's skills in like a
Yeah,
minute.
exactly. Yeah. Okay, that's my decision.
Did you have any nicknames growing up other than Chuck Bass?
No, not really. Like my name is a weird one because it has like the double vowel and the double K, so it's a bit of a hard one to turn into a nickname.
Mika. Is
Me,
that's basically Mike, right? Michael?
yeah,
Is
it's
that
like
what it
a
translates to?
kind of, but we also have like Micah, like one I one K, and then we have
Oh.
Mika, which is a double I and one K, and I just have like the super long version.
You have all of them. Give me all the doubles. All right. Did you have a celebrity crush when you were growing up?
Apart from Ginger Spice, I would say maybe, well, Rachel from Friends. So Jennifer Aniston in that 90s glory probably was the number one in my
All
teenage
right.
years.
Headphones on at the table, yes or no?
Um, I actually, like when I played, I used to always use headphones, but I think now that I occasionally play the random live tournament like once a year, like I played one WSOP event or whatever, I actually choose not to use headphones and try to socialize with people. And I kind of regret that. I wish I had done that more in my actual pro years, but I always wanted to sort of tune off the outside world.
Do you have a favorite musical artist?
A favorite musical artist? I was a massive Radiohead fan when I was growing up. OK Computer came out when I was 11, and I just played that record nonstop for like 2 years. Refused to listen to anything else.
Yeah.
Um,
Their fans are still playing that record.
yeah, I mean it is a great record, but I think I've now heard it a little few too many times. I just can't listen to it anymore. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anyone who I like worship as my the favorite musical artist of all time. I guess I'll answer Steve Albini because he was such a super cool dude. We when we were filming the upcoming Last Call episode, I think we said that we would come over to his studio for like 2 hours or something, and I think we spent like 4 days in there, and he was like incredibly accommodating.
Wow, that's awesome. I had a lot of time. I had Steve on this show. Well, actually, Brandon brought him to our old card player studio for the recording. Ironically enough, but yeah, super nice guy. Obviously, of Nirvana fame. You guys should definitely check that out. Last call. Next episode should be out now if you're listening to this, probably. Um, are you superstitious at all?
I definitely am a little bit. I'm not proud of this because as a poker player, you're really not supposed to be. But yeah, like for example, that I can't remember who it was, but like some dude who had won an EPT or a WSOP very early on in my career told me that it's like a rule that if you bag a chip lead in a live tournament, you cannot change your underwear. And like he wasn't joking. And I think I once played like 4 days in the same underwear because of this.
Yeah,
Like
it worked.
so,
It worked. If you were that,
yeah.
if you were there for 4 days, it must have been. It must have been lucky.
Yeah, I would say I'm like 6 out of 10 superstitious. So I don't have any crazy rituals or anything, but I really do wish that I could say I'm 0 out of 10, but unfortunately not.
What about any phobias?
Like closed, tight spaces. Really, like I would go nuts if I had to go to jail. Luckily, that hasn't happened so far. Haven't committed any crimes, but yeah.
Oh, our
Aside
next
from
question was to admit to all your crimes. So it could happen. Better
well,
keep it to
I
the.
did wake up from a jail once, but that was because I passed out on a street in the middle of the winter and it was so cold that the policeman had to pick me up. I think I actually got like, what do you call it, like day trade drugged. Like someone,
Okay.
like someone was trying to spike someone else's drink, probably my girlfriend at the time, and I somehow drank from her glass, and next thing I know, I was just lying in the middle of the city, completely unconscious and in snow.
Well, that
And
sounds like a friendly police officer then, who locked you up for the night.
yeah, it wasn't the nicest wake up though, because like I had no recollection of anything, and so I didn't know what I had done. Obviously, my first thought was like,
You're
holy
like,
shit, I
oh,
must have like done something really bad. and
they're like, oh, you're just asleep. Man, that's what a relief. What a relief to learn that you were drugged and not that you didn't kill a guy or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and but like that also took a few hours. So I woke up in this cell where I was alone, and they had this little like phone like where you could like press the button and talk to the officers. So I would get up and ask them like why am I here? What have I done? And apparently they wanted to have some fun on the expense of the drunk idiot. I don't think they realized that probably my drink had been spiked. So they actually refused to tell me. They were just like, you'll have a lot of time to think about what you've done.
No.
They like they wanted to teach me a lesson, and I think that went on for quite a few hours.
Oh, brutal. What torture. That's crazy. Okay, do you collect anything?
Um, yeah, two things. So I used to always collect poker chips from every casino where I played. I guess that's a pretty common one, but I actually went through them today, and yeah, it's a very huge jar full of casino chips from all kinds of weird places. It's very fun to go over. And similarly, I usually buy a fridge magnet from every country that I go to, and yeah, I do get quite a lot of compliments about the way my fridge looks. It's quite lively.
Yeah, I mean, with all those, what you say, 70 countries or something crazy like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of magnets. What about the longest poker session you ever played?
It would definitely be more than 24 hours. Like I've had a lot of those. I would guess probably like 36, like that ballpark. Maybe a
Yeah,
little less. I don't know. I,
but
I always played very long sessions, especially in like those years when you could get like very high rake back. There was always like a rake race or something going on that just so you just had to play a lot. And I sort of always enjoyed the degeneracy of that.
what's your biggest pet peeve, or what was your biggest pet peeve at the poker table?
No, I don't know if I have like a really good answer. I obviously always hated like people celebrating, and especially in certain Southern European countries, they they tend to celebrate pretty loudly.
Oh man, that
I
reminds me of so many times I was covering the EPT, and the you're right, because the Finnish are not very emotional.
no.
They don't react to winning a big pot or anything. But some other countries, they'll jump over a rail to high five their friends, and jump on a chair. And yeah, it was very fun covering the EPT and seeing the very different reactions from everybody.
Yeah, I mean now as a spectator, I enjoy it. I'm happy that people are showing emotion. I don't mind it at all. I think it's actually good for the game that it's not just robotic players staring
Yeah.
blankly. But it really does suck when someone outdraws on you and is sitting next to you and starts like dancing on the chair and all that. I do have
Yeah.
a pretty funny quick story about this. I whenever I played in France, which happened a lot, for some reason I always found myself in France. I must have played like dozens and dozens of live tournaments there, and I always felt like that was the one country where like the odds were really stacked against me. I don't like mean to say that there was like a collusion or anything, but it was just like it was such like them versus you type of situation. Like especially because I played a bunch of like smaller tournaments, I would often travel to like a 2K French countryside casino tournament somewhere where I'd be the only foreigner, and it felt like every single time I took some like really nasty bad beat, and like everyone was just celebrating because I would bust out, and they were like, "Yeah,
We got him.
that." So then eventually, I played in the Partours Poker Tour main event, which was a very big tournament in Europe in the around 2010. It was like almost a 10K buy-in, and I I wasn't playing well at all. I was having a completely disaster of a day. It was basically like the softest tournament of the year, I would say, at those stakes, probably even softer than the WSOP main event. I had been looking forward to that for many months. It was in Cannes in this like beautiful beach setting, like this. It was in a tent, so that there was a lot of fresh air and all that. It was like a super enjoyable place to play it, but for some reason I was just like butchering every hand and playing horribly. And then I got it all in with mid set against top set, so from the turn. So I was trying to one out, and I actually picked that one out. And it was like this French dude who had like celebrated against me in multiple live tournaments over the years before that, and just like seeing him go on this like massive tilt. He still had like 100 big blinds left, but he actually like got out of the table. He called every single friend in his phone book and just like yelled in French, like 15 minutes at a time. I don't really speak French. I understand like a few sentences, but like it was obvious that he was just like calling, his wife, his mom, his friends, just like telling the same story and yelling it every single time, like 5 on the river, 5 on the river, and like I. This probably doesn't paint the rosiest picture of me, but oh man, did I enjoy that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think you're allowed to celebrate that one. We end the podcast the same way every time with a question from the random question generator. Here we
Oh,
go. We don't know what it's going to be. Okay. If you were offered the position of mayor of your city, would you take it?
hmm.
Do you think you do a good job?
I don't think I would do a good job. I don't think I would take it actually. Like, I would like to be the mayor of a small city, maybe later in life, where I could possibly like influence some stuff and do like grassroots level decisions. But this is the capital of a country.
Yeah,
And
you're probably in the wrong, and it's not even your country, so it's like it's
well,
like
yeah,
even
that too.
harder. They might even
Yeah,
have laws against it.
yeah. I mean, I might have to do it. Just it'd be pretty interesting for sure to see the reaction. That hey, here's this random Finnish former poker player who's running the capital of Estonia.
Yeah, Mayor Miikka.
Yeah.
How will you fix the problems? I'll have a rebuy tournament, and that'll raise funds. Anyway, Miikka, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing the stories, and also for sharing Last Call. Everyone out there, make sure you go check that out.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
That's it. That is the show. Thank you once again to Miikka. Make sure you go to YouTube right now and check out Last Call on the Pokerisivut channel. Season 1 is already out, and new episodes of Season 2 are dropping this week. Also, make sure you go follow Miikka on Twitter at ChuckBassPoker or on Instagram at IBlameChuckBass. You could follow us on Twitter at CardPlayerMedia or at Poker_Stories. If you like what you heard, please don't hesitate to subscribe. And if you really like what you heard, go the extra mile with a 5-star rating and review. Then let us know you did so by sending us an email to pokerstories@cardplayer.com, and we'll hook you up with a free digital subscription to Card Player magazine. Thanks for listening. By now, you've heard about Global Poker, one of the fastest growing online card rooms available in the US and Canada today. So what's stopping you from trying it out? Global Poker is a safe and secure social poker site that uses their own patented sweepstakes model. Signing up is easy. You can use Google, Facebook, or just an email address. You can always play for free on Global Poker, but you can also buy gold coins for additional play, which will earn sweeps coins that can be redeemed for real cash to a bank account, Skrill account, or even as a gift card. Get a free 5,000 gold coins when you sign up right now at globalpoker.com.